Good morning. It's Wednesday, April 17th. After
No,
tax day.
16. Oh, no, 17.
No, it's the 17th.
Oh, well, wait, are they getting it today or tomorrow?
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure. Okay.
I-
It's
I'll
the
look.
17th.
Wait, I'm not sure when the Poland trip's
Yeah, but
getting
you're
there.
right. 17.
Anyway, this is our last story in the new diaspora, the changing landscape of American Jewish fiction. And I think we've had a good relationship with it, but we're ready to move on. And I'll just open up here. I was a little flabbergasted that this was the last
story.
story. You know, I don't know, if I was the editor, you'd wanna, I don't know, end with a
punch.
bang
Yeah.
or a something. And I did think it was a little bit different topic. It wasn't Holocaust. It wasn't, oh, the poor Jews, you know, it was more about South Africa, which we'll discuss in a hot minute here. And, well, so let me show you. Let's talk about the author.
We've got to give them an editing class.
Well, yeah. This is Tony Eprile, and he's actually, I think he's 70. I don't know if he's 70 in those pictures, but, and he's written other stories about South Africa, and that's where he was born.
Oh, I was gonna say he must have moved there.
Yeah, so I'll talk about that in one, let's talk
I didn't
about,
realize he was male. I mean,
what?
Yeah, could have been
I
a
thought it
little.
was women. I didn't think, it didn't occur to me. I never really think about that though, but I.
So he's a South African writer. And in Wikipedia, it says he was born in Johannesburg in 1955. So that makes him 69, to Jewish parents, which I just think is,
That's the reason it's in the book.
I don't know. He emigrated with his parents to the United States between 1970 and 72. And he, as of 2004, he lives in Vermont. He has taught at Northwestern, Williams, Bennington, Lesley University, and the Iowa Writers Workshop. That Iowa Writers Workshop has more of the authors in this book than anything else. And that's really.
Is he a writer? Has he written other things?
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
he's
He has
right.
written
I did so.
his 2004 book, The Persistence of Memory, Temporary Sojourner and Other African Stories. That's the one I think ours is from. He won the Koret Jewish Book Award. Again, it said in the Wikipedia he was born to Jewish parents, but he is going in for the Jewish Book Awards. That's all I'm saying. That he's Jewish enough for the awards. The novel was also a New York Times Notable Book of the Year and was listed as the best book of 2000, as a best book of 2004 by the Post, Washington Post, and Los Angeles Times. So it looks like he has at least 2 books, and he's, you know, I think he's written other short stories, and he's
But that's an interesting thing. I don't know what the Jewish Book Award means in conjunction with what you just said.
right. Well, there's a few of them. The Koret one I haven't heard, but I will tell you that the Jewish Book Council has an award. And every year I would be like, oh, what's on the Jewish Book Council? What's on the Jewish Book Council? And then I had a colleague who from the area, and she said, did you know if you pay $500, you can get a Jew recognized by the Jewish Book Council? And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So whether it's the publishing house or, you know, there's so many of these books that are self, we know, we have,
But does it have Jewish contact or Jewish parentage or Jewish history?
right. I think each, I'm not sure. Sorry, I'm just pushing so we can see. I'm not sure how the awards work. And, but I would imagine you have to be a Jewish author, a Jewish topic.
Okay.
And I know the Jewish Book Council has fiction, nonfiction, and they also have, and I don't know how recent this is, but a Holocaust Book Award. Because there's so many books on the Holocaust. It is hard not to go in our evening book group. It's hard to go a full year without a Holocaust book. And I think that, you know, in our lifetime, there's just going to be more until there's no.
Right about.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Does somebody have a Lexus SUV here?
I
Drive?
Oh, I
So
do.
you do. They're trying to install our tent and someone's car is parked
Oh.
where they. need
Yeah, it's a
to-
handicap spot. So I
Is
need
it the
to-
handicap spot? Let me go check where it is and I'll let you. I'm sorry.
I
Oh,
just see
get
mine is
the-
silver and it has a,
Silver?
Get the license plate.
I'll get the license.
oh, thank you.
Sorry.
Not that I remember.
I just changed mine, I don't know.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, sweetheart.
So, on to letters from Doreen. Tell me what you thought about the title of the story or the story itself. Janice, super loud.
Okay. I grew up like this with a black woman coming to our house, cooking, cleaning, taking care from the time I was 3 until my kids were grown up. And we did the same thing when she finally retired. We sent money, my sister, my mom and I. I mean, she didn't cost master or anything.
Yeah.
But I learned so much about life growing up in the South and what she went through with her family, and I love the story.
Yeah, okay, Janice loved the story. It's gray.
Wait, ER.
Is it in the handicap spot?
I think it has a handicap placard.
Oh, is it possible for them to move it?
No, but I can.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah, I
you,
walked in and out, it's a big
Stephanie.
deal. Thank
No
you.
problem. I'm gonna move it as close as I can, okay?
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Alice, go ahead. Wait, unmute. All right, did you go?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I also really like the story. Part of the reason I really like the story is that as soon as I finished it, I said, oh my gosh, this reminds me of a novel that I read. So I looked it up this morning, and the novel is called The Promise. It won the 2021 Booker Prize, which is a big prize. It's by Damon Galgut. And it's about a white family. It's not a Jewish family, but it's a white family living in South Africa. And a lot of it revolves around the woman a black maid in their family. And it goes through many years. It starts in 1986 and it goes like into the 2000s, about the family and how it's just about South African, the relationship between whites and blacks who work for them. And to me, this story in just a few pages really captured that relationship, how difficult it was on both sides to kind of
So there was nothing Jewish about that family though, right?
from the novel. No, well, you know what, there might have been. I think actually I take that back. I think one of the parents might have been Jewish. I'm not sure. I read it quite a while ago.
Yeah.
I probably read it in 2021. So but anyways, just in terms of the relationships between the black maids and the family and how that goes. Oh, here we go. Does it say anything about?
It does say it won the Booker Prize.
Yeah, no, but I think, again, I read it quite a while ago. I think, you know what, I have to say we don't read just Jewish books, but this is a Jewish book club that I'm in. So I have a feeling that one of the people in it was Jewish. But the point I'm making is that, you know what? There were lots of white Jewish families in South Africa. And so I just think this is, you know, I thought it was really, really well done. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Izzy and then Judy.
Well, I really thought it was really sad. I felt so bad. It was just a very sad.
Louder, please.
Louder.
Super loud.
It was a sad, tragic story.
Louder.
It was a sad, tragic story to me because I didn't know anything about apartheid. And it made me look up in Wikipedia all about apartheid, which I was so naive and did not really know so much about. So I learned a lot. And what I learned was just, you know, when she was colored, what that means. And then she went across the street and she didn't have her papers. And to me, it was so sad. Plus, I just have to tell you, I looked up what 70 Rand was that she sent. I thought that was a lot of money until I realized it's 80 grand is $4.21. So when she was saying she was sending 80 grand and 70 grand and whatever, we're talking about $4.21. She was not sending a lot of money. And the mother, her previous mistress, whatever it was, kept saying we haven't heard from her because we probably would have heard from her because we sent her money. And so there's this whole overlay that I saw, which was strictly a kind of slave master.
Except that we, you know, if you had sent somebody $4 80 years ago,
I don't think this was 80 years ago.
but if you had said, you know, and it's a different country, you know, we
Right.
don't.
Right, but I'm saying
don't
that they
know.
could send 20, you know what I'm saying? The
Yeah.
point is that they didn't seem like they were very poor. They
Yeah.
put in a pool or whatever, you know, and also they didn't have them come and visit. And it was very well done. I learned a lot. It
Yeah.
was something I didn't know. So I thought, I like this story.
Right.
That's
I do have to say that, I learned a lot about, I'm bringing it up here, about apartheid laws. I mean, I remember in college I had to take a course, but, the book where I think I learned the most is, and it's very, very good, is Trevor Noah, Born a Crime.
Right,
If you
that's-
haven't read it, and the Audible, it's read by him, it's laugh out loud funny, and I highly, highly recommend it. Okay, let's go to Sandy, then Susan.
I didn't really like the story. First of all, it was so different than anything else we had read. And being in Israel, over the 12 years, I met so many South Africans, and that was really what their life was like. And I noticed that they made Aliyah much better than the Americans. They came there, they seemed to have their eyes wide open. They didn't think about going back. Hardly anyone went back to South Africa, whereas a lot of the Americans did go back to the States after maybe a couple years in Israel. And
I think once you leave South Africa, you cannot take your money with you. So you leave with what you have and you can't go back and get it. So I think that was, I'll call it a stumbling block. Sandy, finish up, and then Susan, then Janice.
okay, I like these people. They were smart. The women all read. In fact, a lot of the books that I read while I was in Israel, I got from South African women who had books sent to them by friends and everything and relatives, and they shared them, and they got along with, they had like a chevra with South Africans who lived in town, who lived in another village. They all knew each other and they knew what they had come from. And most of them, in their stories, you knew that they had maids. They had maids, live-in maids, who helped them bring their children up. So it was very real. I liked it very much.
Okay, Susan.
Okay, first I'll tell you, I did read Trevor Noah's book quite
a couple of years ago. It was really good, so I highly recommend it to anybody who didn't read it. Also, I was going to say that when we had our home in Colorado, I had a friend from South Africa, a Jewish woman who became my bridge partner. I have since lost contact with her, but once they left South Africa, she never went back. And her life, she had no desire to ever go back to South Africa. And I will, the thing about this story, when you read her letters, the letters from Doreen, which is what the story is really about, I find it interesting. It comes up how poor their education was for the Black people. I mean, all her run-on sentences with no punctuation, with no capital letters where there should be. I found it fascinating. And I think it really spoke to the differences in the societies between whites and Blacks. I think those letters were very revealing about that.
And we have to remember that it was whites, Blacks, colors. And
there's a fourth one, which was called,
and Trevor Noah, the reason it's Born a Crime is that his
Indians.
father is white and his mother's Black. And that's a crime there. And obviously there's no apartheid there anymore, but I'm sure those, I'm sure that
stigma continues.
that stigma continues.
So is he
Excellent.
considered color?
Pardon?
The maid was considered.
No, is Trevor Noah considered?
He's color.
Okay.
Colors Black.
He's
And the
color.
fourth one is Indians, which I didn't know.
Yeah, right. So the fourth one's Indians. It's a very strict caste system there. And anyone who's read Isabel Wilkerson's Caste,
Yes, I did that.
that book also, excellent book. And it shows you a light of, what's happening in the world and what's still happening. Okay, good thing I wrote this down. Judy,
Okay,
super loud.
I disagreed. I didn't like the story. It was the ending of the book, and it says Jews can also be racist.
Yes.
And that's the end of the book for me. There's racism to hell.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get over it. And I didn't like the story. Jews can be racist.
Yeah, all right, Janice, and then I'll,
Well, a couple of things.
super loud.
In show, we met a couple, Jewish from South Africa, and it's true, you couldn't take your money out. He was a lawyer. No way he was leaving without his money. They took all their money, bought a yacht, and sailed it out of South Africa. And so they sold it, they got their money out.
Yeah, there's many different stories that, you could buy a $2 million stamp. You could put that in your pocket and leave.
And the other thing is, I know from Alberta who took care of me, people here weren't great either. There were water fountains, she said, for Blacks and for whites. The education, Alberta couldn't even write as good as Doreen.
Yeah,
So,
I think
before you
that,
cast the
yeah.
stone, it wasn't good
I
here.
think that as Americans, we are just beginning to face how racist our country is, the Jim Crow laws. We had family in Mississippi, and I went there in 1971. I was 11. I saw the separate water fountains, the separate bathrooms, and it was an aunt. It was my mother's aunt who lived there, and she was okay. She was Christian. She'd married a Jewish man. So my mom's 90. So this woman, would be like, I don't know, 130 if she was alive. And she was still pretty racist about Blacks. And it was when Flip Wilson remember Flip Wilson had his own TV show? And we went to go see a friend of hers and the friend goes, well, I turned the television off. And I was just, I was a little kid. And I hadn't been exposed to that. But I think as we read more, it's incumbent upon us to realize, what's happening in our country. Alice.
I just have to tell.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry. When I was in college, my father wanted me to go to Sophie Newcomb. So he brought me down to New Orleans. During the day when he was working, I went into a courthouse. I had to go to the bathroom. The bathrooms then were white and colored, even for women.
Yep.
I decided.
What year was it?
It had to be 60.
For sure then.
Okay. Yes, right.
Yeah.
So I decided to go into the colored bathroom. I don't want to tell you how frightened the women were when I walked in.
Did you decide purposely to go into the colored bathroom? Or the other one was
I decided deliberately
deliberate?
to go into it because I couldn't believe that there had to be a difference.
Yeah.
I was going to college. What do you mean there could be? And I grew up I went to Highland Park High School, for God's sakes. The president of our class was a Black girl, Tina Pullen, whose father was at the fort. So to me, it was a shocking experience. So this story set off a lot of triggers for me.
Yeah. And as bad as it is in the United States, in South Africa, it's against the law. All right, Alice. Oh.
Yeah, Judy,
Yeah.
I wanna have like a little dialogue with you. You said you didn't like it, but it's just showing another, I mean, all people can be racist. Doesn't matter if you're Jewish or Catholic or Protestant. I mean, that doesn't mean that the story wasn't good. That it's showing people,
Yes,
Jewish people being racist.
I just couldn't get through it.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? I really do recommend that you read Trevor Noah's book, the book I just said. I don't know if any of you, when I was in 6th grade, don't ask me why, but this social studies teacher recommended that I read Cry the Beloved Country.
Oh, it's
I don't know if any of you have read it, but it is an amazing, amazing book. I can't remember the author's name, Alan something, I don't know. But it's about apartheid, but it is absolutely an amazing book. Again, I read it, I was 11 or 12 years old, but it's real. I really feel like that this story in just a few pages really captured what it's like in South Africa, or what it had been like in South Africa. And that's what's good about the book that I recommended, The Promise, because again, it starts in 1986, but it goes forward it's about this family with 4 children, and it goes through each of the children's lives and how their lives were affected by growing up in an apartheid world, as white children. So it's you know what? These stories are eye-opening. To me, it was just another, there's Jews in New York City, there's Jews in Israel, there's Jews all over. And, to me, it was eye-opening in terms of the Jewish experience in South Africa.
Sandy.
Well, like Judy, when we went south and we took our little girls, they were like 6, 9, and maybe the youngest was 2. We went only to the colored bathrooms. We only drank water at the colored water fountains because that was the way I had been taught, not to have any prejudices. And we were shocked. We weren't shocked because I remember that from years before in the South. But the people who saw us coming out of the washrooms and drinking at the colored fountains, they looked like they hated us.
Yes.
They looked like they wanted to kill us. They knew what one time in Georgia, David and I and the kids jumped in the car and took off so fast. We thought we were going to be killed by a mob, a white mob at a gas station, because they had seen us make that statement. But we had a Black woman who lived with our family. She didn't live with us. She came to us twice a week to my house, twice a week to my sister's house, and once to my brother's house. And my brother said, you know what? Nobody was doing this. He said, we should pay Social Security for her so that she'll have something when she's older. And we did that. And just
Nice.
like they sent money to Dor, and they also cared about, what her life was like, we did that. And we used to go back to the South Side when we lived up here in Glenview, and we used to bring her up here for a weekend and take her shopping and things for clothes. And my kids adored her. My kids adored her till the day she died. But we learned that a lot of her own grandchildren used to steal her money and steal her when she couldn't go out very much, they would take her Social Security checks and cash them and spend a lot of the money. She told us this.
Yeah.
It's very sad. That's a Chicago vignette.
Susan and Beverly.
Me, Sue.
Okay.
Oh,
Did you call?
Sue Roberts, do you have a comment?
Yeah, yes, I have two comments. I love this story, and I felt it was very true. We spent a month in South Africa for my 65th birthday, which was granted quite a while ago. But we had a Jewish guide in Cape Town, and he told us we went to the Jewish museum there, and he told us what it was like. So we asked him. Now, let me just go back 1 second. Our mindset was different than a lot of Americans who come to South Africa who really didn't understand the depth of apartheid and what have you. We also had lived in Shreveport, Louisiana from 1963 until 1965, before we were there, our youngest daughter was born there, and I was in a white hospital, and we lived through all of that before the Civil Rights Act was enacted. Separation of blood and the whole thing. So I felt that this story really depicted what it was like. I don't know, unless you were there. I don't think our news captured the extent of what apartheid was in South Africa, and how restrictive and how unbelievably difficult it was for everybody. And I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it either. But I felt that this story just really depicted it. And what occurred to me at the very end was I felt somebody else was writing Doreen's letters that she could not write.
Interesting.
Because there was no punctuation, I just felt like somebody else was writing those letters. And my clue was that the money in the very end, the money was different than the beginning of the story. So that kind of didn't work for.
I think everyone here knows the power of reading and how we can, when you read something and it shows you a new culture. Okay, Susan. Yeah. Susan Wellett, go.
Oh dear, now I forgot what I was going to say.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. It went.
Come back to you.
You'll have to come back to me because I lost it. I'm sorry.
Beverly, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I like the story. The thing that got me the most was the money. I thought that was very significant because she kept talking about her health and that she was getting sicker and sicker. And they never sent her any more money, but that small pittance. And then at the end, it was less money. And I thought that was very, very significant and I think had Mark, the son, who really loved Doreen, and she had been so patient with him when his mother was not. And he had a real fondness for her. And I don't think that he had any clue about the amount of money and what his parents were not really doing for Doreen. So for me, the money was a real major telling point of the relationship in the story. And I liked it very much. I thought it was a very well written and interesting how she remembered all the holidays. And I had to look up what it meant to be colored. If you were colored, you didn't need identification. So for some reason, I don't know. I didn't understand why. And if you were Black, you were tribal. Can anyone explain that to me any better?
Again, it just shows you the caste system there. And they, obviously colored people have some white in them and Black people were, indigenous. Yeah.
But then sometimes like.
And it was just a lower caste, absolutely.
Black was lower?
Oh,
Is that
absolutely,
what you're saying?
absolutely. It was Black, colored, white. Yep. All right, Sue Wellington, then Alice.
Okay, I remembered now. So people were talking about what it was like in the South here before the civil rights. And we had a very interesting experience when my husband was in the service and we were living on an Air Force base in England. Another couple who became very dear friends of ours were from Mobile, Alabama. And when she and I were both pregnant at the same time, and the OBGYN specialist on the base was a Black man. And she made me promise when her parents came prior to the birth of, as my mother came, before the birth of our babies, we were due 2 days apart from each other. It was, quite a coincidence. She made me promise I dare not tell her parents that she had been touched and examined by a Black man. She said, don't let them know.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, we went to a different airbase to have our babies delivered. And as it turned out, it was a British doctor on the other airbase who happened to be Jewish. So that was kind of a coincidence. But can you imagine? She absolutely was terrified that her mother and father would find out that a Black man had touched her.
I know, I am not surprised at all. Elaine, super loud,
We
louder.
sit here in Highland Park and people are victims or used to where they live and pick up the customs of where they live. And when you're in South Africa or the South, you just grow up with this hatred, if you want to call it, or information about Black people. And you have to sort of think about, it's like the Orthodox Jew versus the Reformed Jew. We live one way, they live another way. And
The only thing is that in South Africa, it was a law.
right, but you're used to the law, you accept the law.
Until eventually they did.
Yeah, until eventually they did.
Yeah.
But in the story,
Yes.
that was the case. And I think the white family felt that they were helping her and doing as much as they wanted to do. And,
Right.
you know, it's very easy, as I keep saying, in 2024 to say, oh, well, I would do this and I would do that. I don't know if you were born in the 60s and 70s. I mean, think of all of our Yiddish, how people used to say Schwarze. And that was like, okay, you just said it. Nowadays, if someone says it, it's like, oh my God, you're such a racist. So we're looking at a 70s story through today's eyes. And,
Yeah.
and I think it's
I
a
agree.
different dynamic.
Yeah, it is a different dynamic. Alice and then Izzy, then Ellen.
Yeah, I think an important paragraph of the story, and there's a lot, is on the top of page 542. And he's talking about the German Jews that fled to South Africa. And then it says the German government, many got a generous pension from the German government as well as money to simply come and visit. The German word was Wiedergutmachung, which literally translated to making good again. And then this is what I think is important. He says, Mark finds this term absurd, a bit of linguistic black humor. There are some things that cannot be made good again. They become part of the past and the world is forever changed by them. Of course, what the German Jews went through before the Holocaust and during the Holocaust, I think he's referring to. And then I think he's also referring to what happened to the Blacks in South Africa. It's, you know, it's hard to, you know, the world is forever changed by them. You can go forward and do different things and act differently, but it's hard to go back and make reparations for something like that.
You can make reparations. Izzy, then Ellen.
I have a couple of stories.
Very
I
loud.
grew up, our cleaning lady used to come, or my mother used to work, and she used to come and put the chicken in the oven so we could have Shabbat dinner.
Loud.
My mother referred to her, my father referred to her as a Schwarze. And it just went, I was like 10, 12 years old. I hated that word. And I'd say, why you just call her, you know, Belle, that was her name. And I resented it. I hated it. Then when my second child was born, my mother-in-law, she was very dark, you know, she had dark hair and kind of dark skin, you know, and one day she called her, she looks like a Schwarze. And I didn't know, you know, I didn't want to be rude and say, that's like so pejorative. How could you say something like that? Then I went to camp.
Louder.
I went to overnight camp. And my aunt, whose best friend was the black cook. And Corinne, it was like driving Miss Daisy. And Corinne was like her best friend. She was my, you know, like role model. She cooked for the camp, everybody. And it just is it depends on your attitude as a person, I guess. It depends on your values. My mother used to say Schwarze.
Yeah, well, I think we know
It's
now,
just-
you know, my grandparents used the word Schwarze. And I keep thinking about this story and how would it fall on, you know, my children's generation.
Oh,
you know?
they would resent it.
I think they know about apartheid.
Take it as history. I'm sure
I
they
know.
do.
Right, Ellen, then Judy.
Well, I like the fact that Alice brought up the part of what Mark's reaction was. I thought Mark was part of what was maybe the most interesting part of the story. I think when you go back in history and you look at these things, well, just take the maid thing to begin with. All of us that had, whether they were black maids or in my case it was, and we loved her, she was part of the family. She was like a surrogate mother. She taught me how to iron and get ready to go to college, you know, that kind of stuff. But I think there's a different relationship between the people that hire the person and the kids that the person helps
Yes,
raise.
excellent
Mark,
point.
Mark was going back and visiting his parents and his sister and they all had different views. And I think that that's, in my view, because I didn't love it, I thought that was the best part of the story, is that you got that differentness. And the other thing I was gonna say, we were in South Africa about 5 years ago. And granted, I wish it was more, although we did a lot of historical, the whole Nelson Mandela, the prison and the freedom. And I certainly came away with the feeling that South Africa, Cape Town, I loved. Joburg, I didn't see as much of. We had a wonderful night with, one night there. I came away with the feeling that the South Africans have probably, matured's not the right word, but evolved into a society that's at least as non-discriminating as we are here in the States. When you think of our slavery being so long ago, and look what we're still going through. I mean, I think we can all learn from this, but be careful when you're, how judgmental you are, because, oh my God, do we have things to fix in our own country.
Here. Ellen.
No, that wasn't.
All right, Judy. I know your name, I swear. When we first started book group, I made everybody put on the name tags. Because
I would have to do that. I would have to say that.
Okay.
Okay, I really agree with Ellen. But when I came, now this was on the second page, and I saw Germany, and I have a family relative who took them up on it for reparations, which horrified me.
Took Germany up on reparations?
Yes.
Why?
She felt she was owed it.
Okay, so
And
why?
she wanted her grandchildren to be able to be educated there if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Because you can get free education there.
Yeah.
Okay, I was horrified when she did it. I don't care the reason. Free education, my God, it made me crazy. But the point about Marx evolving, my grandmother had a black maid. I adored her. She was part of the family. I couldn't, when I saw racism by the generation above me, I did everything I could to fight it. I went to college, I took every Black literature course, and I took it, one of them was from Arna Bontemps, and I don't know if you know this, but he was the very first Black author.
Oh.
And we had people, I'm not gonna remember his last name, who wrote Black Boy, Richard.
Right.
Oh, Richard.
Right.
I mean, my daughter married a Black man. I have children that are multiracial. I cannot understand, and I don't have a place in my heart for not having evolved more than Mark did. I think many people in my generation reacted much more dramatically when they saw, look at the boys that went down to do voting in the South were white, and they
Andrew Goodman and.
yeah, right, and Jewish, and
Yeah.
but we did something more dramatic. These people did nothing dramatic, and I was offended by their lack of reaction to the generation above them. Even though it was law, it got changed because people fought it.
Yeah.
Why didn't they fight it enough in this story?
Yeah, in their defense, they didn't know any better. I know that other people eventually fought against apartheid. I remember seeing movies my freshman year in college and coming home and saying to my parents, why didn't you fight apartheid? And they're like, what do you want from us? And I saw Hearts and Minds about Vietnam. That intro to sociology 101 course, I'll never forget it. And it really opened my eyes. I grew up, in Crystal Lake. Anyway, and it's not easy to go against
No.
the grain. And as we teach our kids today, you have to be an upstander. And it's not easy standing up for other people's rights. Sandy.
Well, of course, like all the rest of you, I heard that too, Schwarze. And the worst thing was they used to say my Schwarze, which even is worse than just describing her as a Schwarze. But today I still hear women, Jewish women, talk about my girl. The woman could be 60 years old cleaning their house, but they'll call her my girl. They'll be talking about her, referring that way. And that's really insulting.
The only thing I can tell you is this. My 90-year-old mother has finally acquiesced to get help. And she calls them all my girl, the girl. And I go, what's their name? She goes, I don't know. So my mom does it, but she can't remember. And it's more than one person. I said, Tiffany, Michelle, Doreen.
But if they're over 40 years old or 30 years old, they're not a girl. You could say the lady that cleans for me or something. They've got to stop saying my girl. I think that's insulting.
It's hard. Abby, real loud.
I'm gonna ramble because my mind is going on all different sides of this. I did not grow up with help in the house. My mother had a cleaning woman maybe every month or so and so forth. I never heard the word Schwarze. She always had a name. And I do remember when Margie did pass out on the bathroom floor because she was drinking a little bit of, I guess we had some wine or something, and it was filled with water after a while, realized, and she woke up out of a stupor and said, what's happening with the Democrats, Republicans? This was back in 1960, whatever. But I never felt that, and yet, if I heard somebody say that, I would absolutely cringe. On the other hand, when we first moved to, when our son Danny was born, he was in his early 50s, and I had joined, I think it was the ORC group or something like that, and people would say, well, yeah, you could do a daytime thing, your girl will take care of it, your girl. And I, being naive as I was at the time, I said, I have boys, I don't have girls. I did not know what a summer girl was. So that was a long time ago. But on the other hand, if you're not, you can't give what you don't know to give or not able to give. And until you learn what the way of doing things, and maybe this family, maybe it was not in their purview, was that the word? I never used that word. Whatever, to know that.
Their life experience.
Their life experience. On the other hand, I too was taken by Mark's statement. And at first I thought, yeah, but then again, I also thought it's not just a Jewish thing. We don't always remember what happened, but we remember the feelings, and those feelings are stuck in there, and it's very hard to overcome them. I'm currently doing a great courses kind of thing on my own, of one that I bought a long time ago on history of the South, and realizing that the prejudice in the colonies was something that was learned because the Brits and one did not want to have black slaves because there was such an aversion to blacks that they had them on their property. So that was totally new, that they learned that from the people in Barbados and so forth. So I guess our feelings and what we learn, this changes over time.
Yeah. Elaine.
I don't know. Yeah. You know what? I think the book depicted the world as it was at that time. We don't always like what we know. And you can't do better until you know better. And my point is, that was the way people lived. And I did not grow up, my family had zero help in the house, but my friends all had help. And then when they got married, the woman sort of went to the younger people and helped them with the children. And you know what? Yes, they were part of the family, but they were not part of the family.
Yes.
Now, I remember moving to Highland Park when the women who worked for all of these people would stay on Friday nights to do Shabbat dinner, and the police would pull them over regularly on their way back to Waukegan or their way into Chicago, because what are you doing here? Why are you driving? And, I have a terrible story to tell, and this is a horrible confession. When I had my gallery, I met a man at Sunset who had been the houseman for the Armours. And for some ridiculous reason, he liked me and decided he would come half a day, every day to my house. Or maybe I gave him $10 a day because we were not wealthy and we could not afford it. Well, my big shot son, he had a son that was my son's age, who was a very large black man, because this man was a very large black man. And Steve and the son got into a fight. And the son ended up putting my son's head in the toilet at the high school.
Right.
So of course it was a big to-do. And afterwards, the man and I, who I will not say his name because some of you may have known him, decided that the kids would stay apart for our sake. But yes, he was part of the family, but / part of the family.
Yeah.
He was not. Yeah, we all loved him in my family, except my son. But he didn't have the same kind of feelings. And I beg to argue that all of you, if you really look in your heart, it's not like your sister or your brother. It was someone who worked for your family, who you cared about, but there was a line that they didn't cross and you didn't cross. Yeah. That's the last I'm talking to you.
That's okay. You might want to talk again. I think that this story just brings up a lot, not just in South Africa, here in the United States. And Nikki Haley, who's out of the race now, but she said, we don't live in a racist country. Yes, we do. And I think you have to acknowledge it so you can fight it. And, I'm certainly, we do here at Macomb and Tikkun Olam and trying to, make this world a better place. And Ellen's going to be getting postcards out to get out the vote. We have to vote and we have to, try to make the change that we want. Merle, you've been so quiet. Any comments? Yeah, wait. All right, go.
Okay, hi. I felt like he didn't go far enough in describing apartheid. And when Doreen was writing to the family, she said she was working for another family called the Gillens, and the work was too hard for her. They had reduced their staff, and yet the family in the story did not try to contact the Gillens and say, maybe Doreen shouldn't be doing something this difficult. And I felt that he just didn't go far enough in describing apartheid, because I also read the Trevor Noah book, and what I remember most is that Trevor Noah's mother, who was Black, could not take her little son to the park because they were racially mixed. So she would hire somebody to come with her and pretend that she was the babysitter for her own child. And that's how she took him to the park. So I felt like this whole story was just a suggestion of how bad it was, like just the tip of the iceberg, without going into a full-scale indictment of what was going on there.
Beverly. Beverly,
No.
go ahead. Joyce.
I had my say.
Right, Joyce, go ahead.
This story made me so angry at the end when the Spiegelmans finally went back to South Africa, went back to the complex that they lived in, saw the gatekeeper. They asked about Doreen, and he said, oh, she must have died. And that was the end of it. They never investigated further. Doreen was still alive. They made the trip there and never bothered to look any further. And I wanted to scream at the end. You know, they felt that they sent all these years their little pittance and thought they were being magnanimous and assuaging their guilt, perhaps, of having made it to the States and doing their part. They couldn't have given a, excuse my language, shit about her. I think Mark is the only one that really cared and loved her and cared about her. And the mother was two-faced. I think the lines on page 582 about that Mark can get, that Mrs. Spiegelman can get away with talking to a maid. It says, you know, Charles says, now your mother's the only person I know who can spend the afternoon talking to the maid without it making it seem like condensation. I think she can get away with it, he adds after some thought, because she's not really a liberal. I mean, she was acting a part. She
Yeah.
was, to me, it put it in perspective and changed the whole trajectory of the story for me.
Two comments. One, in 2024, it's much easier to research someone. We have an internet, we have a this, we have that. If you think about it, you know, back in the day, it would be hard to try to track someone down, especially in South Africa, where you have these real hard, fast lines between communities. And the other thing, I love old movies, and the other night, Gone with the Wind was on. And I'll just say it just has not really aged well. And I know it's classic, and some of the actors are unbelievable, but the writing, you know, remember it has writing, you know, they came back, the gallant, you know, came back after 5 years at war, and I was like, oh my God. And at one time they had taken it off, it was on TCM, they had taken it off the channel. I'm like, oh, maybe they should. And it's just fascinating to see where we were, where we've come from, where we are, and the same for South Africa, Judy.
I'm very involved in copyright, and a lot of things have just become available in copyright. And if you look at some of them is very early Disney.
Early Disney, super racist.
Yeah. If you saw some of these things, even, you know, Billy Joel had his concert the other night.
Yeah.
Some of the earliest songs have stuff in it.
Yes.
Think about it twice now, and especially how they treat women in these songs.
Yeah.
So
But that was the day, that's my point.
and it's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
So the question
Time
now is,
changes
do you
things.
keep those things in the canon, or do you take them out? Izzy?
The thing that really morphed out of this is where we are today.
Yes.
You talk about the guy who was jogging, a black guy in a white neighborhood, and
Yeah.
how they profile the profile.
Yeah.
George Floyd, everything that's going on now
Yes.
with the police, they shot that guy, what, 100 times? 90.
It's
You know what?
It's close to
Yeah, we haven't come with 2024, we haven't evolved really as much as you would think we should have. There's still so much ingrown hatred, ingrown prejudice. Yeah, I don't know how you get
It takes a very, very long time to rethink, and we can all act like we are, you know, not prejudiced. In the back of our mind, it's the 1950s still, because that's when you grew up, that's what you knew. And it pops out in the strangest damn ways that you don't even, oh, I understand. No, I don't live it. I live in Highland Park. I don't live in West Garfield. We went, before, in December, the temple went to this West Garfield, which was a very, very poor storefront. And at that point, my husband had died recently, and I had tons of clothes, winter coats, maybe a half a dozen really nice winter coats. So I said to the pastor, I have all of this clothes. Two of my very well-intentional friends said to me, you're assuming that these people need this. That is racist. But as we drove up, there are empty storefronts, there are bricks I mean, I wasn't thinking racist. I was looking at the neighborhood. Now, at this church on Sunday, the people were all dressed up because we were coming for a celebration. But
they always dress up.
Okay, yes, for church, right. But I'm saying they could have used, so I said to the pastor that my story, and I said, is there a need? And he jumped right on it. Now he fell off jumping on it because he didn't ever come and pick up the stuff. And I was not driving to West Garfield with my bags of clothes. So my son took them, this one, his suit, to the state's attorney. Because when the felons come before the judge, they need a suit. So when you see a short felon in a suit, it's my husband's suit.
Thank you, everyone. We're done with our book. We'll begin May 1st in Candle Feather Wooden Spoon. It's a long, and the first story is Time Palace. I will send out the recording of today. I will send out the dates of our next books. And I think that we're going to go, we'll go May and June and July, and part of August will be off. And then the holidays are very late. So we can go in September, and October will be a little fragment.
So you saying we're going May through July or no?
No, May through June.
May through June, okay.
July, I'm at camp and I'm on vacation.
Okay.
Yay!
We're going to Vancouver.
Oh,
To Squamish.
Oh.
Nice.
All right.
What is the date in May?
The dates in May are, it's always the
1st and 3rd.
1st and 3rd, so that's May 1st and May 15th.
Okay,
All right.
good. Yep.
Good to see everybody, and I hope I see you at Macomb. We got a lot of fun things going on over the month of May. Be well. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye. Have a good Passover.
Happy Passover. Happy Passover.
Happy Passover.
Happy Passover.